Rasta music that keep reggae alive. Reggae music during its conception, because I was there when the thing was conceptualized. It was a tool that Rasta would use, an instrument to send the message across.
Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. It's often said that adversity inspires great art, and reggae music is no exception to this rule. As far as the genre is concerned, the 1970s is a decade celebrated as the absolute peak, an era of sizzling Rastafarian consciousness that powered the greatest albums ever recorded. And from that legendary epoch, one of the most brilliant and outstanding bodies of music was the album War in a Babylon by reggae icon Max Romeo, a perfect storm of lyrical genius, production wizardry by an eccentric master producer at the absolute top of his game, and fire instrumentals by one of reggae's most celebrated studio backing bands. These three factors would birth 10 sublime tracks that made up this exceptional body of art. It's simply the definitive roots reggae album, and a huge yardstick by which others are measured by till date due to its hard-hitting message and tone. Max Romeo's inspiration for this album was derived from his intense disappointment at Jamaica's then Prime Minister, as well as his horror at his country's descent into chaos, which saw that beautiful island almost destroyed by a low-level civil war between enforcers of the country's two main political parties. Now let's take a look at how Jamaica's then crisis would inspire Max Romeo's 1976 masterpiece, War in a Babylon. Before Max Romeo was putting out conscious roots reggae classics, he was first renowned for his 1968 slackness anthem, Wet Dream, a song that was banned from the airwaves by the BBC, but still stayed in that country's charts for 6 months and sold 250,000 copies all over Europe. But as the 70s unfolded, Max and many other artists had begun to pivot towards music with social, spiritual, and political significance. In 1969, Michael Manley took over the leadership of the left-leaning PNP political party after the death of its former leader in his father, Norman Manley. The younger Manley was an avid socialist who spoke the people's language and was a champion of third world causes, and this made him very popular with the masses in Jamaica and a darling of the island's Rastafarians and musicians included. A sharp contrast to his then rival in JLP's leader Edward Siaga, who was seen as an elitist who was very far from the common man. Max Romeo himself was an admirer of Michael Manley, and in fact, his 1971 album, Let the Power Fall, was used by the PNP as a campaign song in the run-up to the 1972 elections, which Manley won and emerged as the island's Prime Minister. After his victory, Max Romeo went to the studio and recorded a single called No Joshua No, in which he admonished Manley not to forget the masses who had voted him into power. Joshua was a nickname given to Manley by his supporters. But as years went by, Jamaica descended into economic depression due to Manley's policies, and even more telling, his rivalry with opposition leader Edward Siaga had resulted in violence building up in the streets between political enforcers of both parties. And needless to say, the people were very disappointed in Manley's government. Max Romeo would first express his frustration at the situation in his 1975 album Revelation Time, which had production input by the Scratch Perry with the song Three Blind Mice. But by the end of that year, the political violence in Jamaica had spiraled out of control, with Kingston now divided into garrisons, controlled by both PNP and JLP thugs. Armed gangs waged battle in the streets, resulting in unseen levels of casualties. Those were very dark days in Jamaica, and traumatized Max Romeo in particular very deeply, and leading him to pen down songs that expressed his heartbreak, utter disappointment, and pessimism about Jamaica's future. To bring these songs to life, he approached his old pal and producer, Lee Scratch Perry. Both guys had very good rapport and chemistry in the studio, and by then, Perry had just opened his now legendary studio called the Black Ark, right in the back of his family home. Perry then also boasted of a spectacular in-house studio backing band, the Upsetters, a phenomenal lineup that included the likes of Jeffrey Chung, Noel Sims, and Boris Gardner. And one of the first songs that they put together was a song called Simple Out There that would later be renamed as War in a Babylon. After it was recorded, Bob Marley would visit Black Ark Studios to see Perry, and Perry would play it for him to listen to. and the Tough Gong was simply blown away by the song and asked Perry if he could sing it, but Perry refused. Island Records boss Chris Blackwell would visit Black Ark Studios a few days later, I presume to see what the noise was all about, and Perry would play it for him as well, and Blackwell's mind was also blown when he heard it. On the spot, Blackwell put down the money for Perry to produce an album of Romeo's music, and on the spot signed the singer to Island Records. So Romeo, Perry and the Upsetters would create heavy deep songs that reflected Jamaica's condition in tracks like One Step Forward, The Flawless Chase the Devil, Uptown Babies, and The Haunting Norman the Gambler, a 4 minutes 50-second hypnotic effort about an oppressor that I suspect was a dig at Prime Minister Michael Manley's father, Norman Manley. But that's just my active imagination talking. But the song which really put Michael Manley to the sword was One Step Forward, which had lyrics like one day you are dreadlocks, well dread, next day you are bald head, clean shave, as well as lyrical darts like are you a con man or are you a dreadlocks. The track Uptown Babies is probably the most instrumentally upbeat in a very solemn and pessimistic album, even though it features the lovely backup vocals of Marshall Griffiths. It tells a bleak story about the plight of inner city ghetto kids. Putting it mildly, War in Babylon is an absolute scorcher that became just one of the greatest albums of not just the year it was released, but truly among the greatest of all time. It became a commercial smash that sold millions of copies, and also a critically acclaimed masterpiece that was the first of Lee Scratch Perry's greatest bodies of music, popularly called his Holy Trinity, which included the Heptones' Party Time and Junior Mervin's Police and Thieves. But amidst the album's success, Jamaica was on the verge of civil war and economic collapse with a deadly wave of violence which almost claimed the life of Bob Marley in December 1976. And also sadly, it was the last project that Max Romeo and Lee Scratch Perry would work on together, as the pair would fall out not long after its release. Jamaica would catch its breath for a little while in the aftermath of the One Love Peace concert that held in 1978, but would descend into political violence again in 1980. Though to be honest, it's never really reached the dangerous heights of the year 1976. After releasing War in Babylon, Max Romeo felt threatened by the powers that be over the roasting that he gave the establishment on the album and moved to the US with his family 2 years later. Jamaica's terrible crisis in those times inspired one of the most radical, fiery, and mesmerizing bodies of music ever recorded in War in Babylon, which is truly among the greatest albums in the history of reggae music and music in general. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.